Welcome back. This is the second keynote for today. I'm Michael Love, and I'm here to introduce Sehyun Oh. Sehyun is a postdoctoral fellow at the Institute for Implementation Science and Population Health at CUNY. She's a molecular biologist by training with a PhD in molecular biology from the University of Minnesota, and previously a postdoc from Columbia University. As a postdoctoral fellow, she investigates intratumoral heterogeneity of ovarian carcinoma subtypes and assists in the development of approaches for multi-omic data analysis. And people in the bioconductor community know her very well from her work on a contributor to ANVIL and a number of the curated data packages and publications with other bioconductor authors in multi-omic analysis of cancer data sets. So thank you so much for your talk today, Sehyun. Take it away.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the nice introduction. So let's start. Yeah, so hi, my name is Sehyun Oh, and today I'm going to share my experience on cloud-based genomics work, focusing on the bioconductor use cases on the cloud. Okay, so studies based on large sequencing data sets are growing rapidly, and public archives for raw sequencing data is expanding very fast. And leveraging these large data repositories requires large-scale computational resources. And not everyone has that ready, and then it's becoming beyond the scale that any individual or institute can handle. So now cloud computing become one of the solutions for these issues. So cloud computing is, by definition, users rent computers and storage. And the reason it become a potential promising solution is due to its elasticity, reproducibility, and privacy features. So before we go to a little more in detail, I want you to get the sense of how big the genomic data are right now. So this plot shows how fast the size of genomic data repository is growing. And this is a sequence read archive example. So from mid-2012 to early 2017, the amount of genomic data in SRA doubled 4 times. And as of October 2017, the SRA contains about 14 petabases, which is millions of billions of bases of data there. And this is roughly translated about 30 terabytes of public sequence data is received and processed daily by the NCBI SRA. And it requires about 87 gigabytes of storage space for a single whole genome. And transferring this data will take about 11 minutes on a dedicated 1 gigabyte of second network. So as you might feel a little more clear now that the genomic data, amount of genomic data available is growing really fast, and it's a lot, and there are large genomic projects and resources available out there. And these are a few advantages of cloud computing. I briefly mentioned in the previous slides, the first, scalability for both storage and data, and even compute resources. And cloud computing make sharing and collaborate possible to do those things securely. And reproducibility comes with shared infrastructure and code, and greatly increase the reusability. And at the end, they democratize data access and potentially analysis itself too. So there are many cloud-based genomics platforms are actually already exist. And this table shows a few examples, actually based on the platforms I have experienced. I put those platforms here based on the hosted data sets and available analysis tools offered through the platform. And in today's talk, I will focus on the major use cases around the Terra platform called Terra. So first, I will introduce what Terra is and share 4 major use cases. I think it can, you guys can hopefully can find at least one of them can be useful for your bioinformatics work. So first example is teaching, and the other ones are like bioinformatics analysis with minimum coding and sharing your published work and building a workflow package powered by Terra. So let's start from what Terra is. So before I'd like to introduce Terra in the context of ANVIL project, which stands for Analysis, Visualization, and Informatics Lab Space. So traditional model of genomic data sharing is about centralized data warehouse, such as dbGaP, and from which researchers download data to analyze them locally. But problems with this traditional model is that it costs money to transfer and download those data sets. And as I mentioned earlier, it can take quite a long time to just even download them. And this inevitably creates a redundant compute infrastructure. And in case of protected data, security becomes a big issue, because once you download in your local spot, then from there is no access right control, and then you need to take care of those data being safe. So to solve these issues, NHGRI launched the ANVIL project, which aims to provide a unified environment for data management and compute. ANVIL will make it possible that no need to move data, and then better security handling will be guaranteed while providing elastic and shared computing resources. So here in the diagram in the right shows the different ANVIL component, and ANVIL component, which includes data and compute platform called Terra and workflow, and bunch of different interactive analysis. So different people can you can use their familiar interface for analysis. And so let me start. I want to go through those different platform elements. So as I just mentioned, Terra is one of the ANVIL platform components that provides a compute environment with secure data analysis sharing capabilities. So Terra provides interactive analysis interfaces such as Jupyter Notebook and RStudio with flexible on-demand computation capacity, which sourced from Google Cloud Platform. And here, this screen capture shows the workspace header, which is the main building block of Terra and contains data and workflows and interactive analysis interfaces labeled as notebooks here. And the other component of ANVIL is data. So data model management and cohort generation is done by Gen3, and the resulting resources is featured by easy authentication and free storage and transfer of data hosted by Terra. Here, these are the currently available data sets in Terra. So for example, if a user has access to multiple different data sets by linking ERA account once, Terra will figure out all of them, and you only need to worry about data security even when you're sharing them with others, because data itself is labeled with certain authentication. So you don't need, while people are trying to access, Terra will take care of who should access or who shouldn't. And the last major component of ANVIL is workflow. So currently, Terra supports only WIDO, a workflow description language. But there is a large collection of pre-built WIDO workflows in DocStore, and you can directly import any of them to Terra Workspace. So this is a screenshot of DocStore. So for example, I search it by RNA, and then it gives different workflows you can use. And there's a lot of different filters, so it makes it easy for you to find the pre-built workflow that you want to use. And I just mentioned the WDL is the main script. And to understand the flexible resource availability through Terra, I want you to take a look at the runtime component of WDL. So here, runtime. And so under runtime, you can specify environment conditions like Docker container, CPU, and memory at the individual task level. So the WDL workflow can contain many different tasks, and then under the workflow, using core function, you can bring the different tasks. So you can kind of put together your own workflow, but this meaning that each task can use different Docker container and different computational environment, which makes it which facilitate the efficient and flexible use of computing resources. And as I mentioned, because it's used taking container, it can get the benefit of container, which is portability and reusability and reproducibility. And there are a bunch of repositories such as Docker Hub, Dockstore, I mentioned previous slide, which is actually one of the major player of ANVIL project and the Google's own container repository. So I just overview the ANVIL platform component, including its computing environment, Terra. And now I will go through 4 use cases of Terra. And the first one is setting up classroom in Terra. So take-home message for this use case is, I will say, the hassle-free setup. So Terra Workspace allows a setup of a lecture or lab in advance of sharing it, where everyone uses the same runtime environment. So there is no setup or compatibility issues. So the sharing part, you can create a group to share a workspace and or building by a few clicks following this orange arrow. So you can make a group of your students, and then you can give them educational credit so they don't need to worry about their own billing, or you can create your own lecture workspace and then let that specific group have access to it. Once you create the group, that will be very easy to do. Or you can share a workspace itself by adding a group or individuals in just individual email by following these pink arrows. So it's another way to share the workspace, and you can see it's taking only a few clicks. And the other benefit is and Terra offers flexible runtime environment, and creating different runtime is very intuitive and provided with the cost per hour information. So once you click this button in the upper right corner of the Terra Workspace, first it will show the default option with the cost information. So default runtime environment is Terra assigned for CPU, 15 GB of memory, and 50 GB of persistent disk. So that will cost about 20 cents per hour while it's in active use, barely nothing while it's not in use, and it will cost about $2 per month for the persistent disk. And if you click this Customize button, it allows you to select Compute Profile here. It will give this pop-up menu, and then you can select the CPU, memory, and then different size of persistence disk using just user interfaces. And here again, under Application Configuration section, you can click this drop-down menu, and you can choose different environment, including RStudio, or even your own container under the custom environment. And this table shows the hourly cost for custom environments, and the persistent disk price of persistent disk is 4 cents per gigabyte per month in US dollars. So that's how 50 gigabytes costs $2 per month. And Terra also offers several cost saving strategies too. So for example, runtime will stop after a certain amount of inactive time to avoid accidental charge. And also so that's for the notebook. And at the workflow level, you can choose to use core caching or even delete intermediate output to save compute and then storage cost. So in summary, the positive aspects of using Terra for teaching is there is no setup or compatibility issues, and each student select their own compute environment, and everyone can use what they want. And then the one I mentioned, Terra's auto suspension of notebook runtime helped keep costs low, and students only have to log in, and there's no need to set up billing. But the flip side is because everyone can select their own compute environment, there is no way to identify an overspending student or to limit what runtime they must use. And currently, we can do cost breakdown per student. One thing to note is that billing is post-pay, so you can find out how much you spend with about 24-hour delay. So the first classroom example is mostly focused on notebook usage, and this second example expands to workflow usage. And the example I brought here is RNA sequencing analysis workspace. This workspace contains workflow using Salmon to get count metrics from FASTQ file, and the notebook explaining interactive downstream analysis. So to run this workflow, you just need to provide FASTQ file and then transcriptome files here under the input, and just click Run Analysis button. And once the job is successfully done, which you can monitor under job history, and the timeline is breakdown for each task level, and the output will be automatically saved in Google Cloud bucket linked to this specific workspace, which is automatically created by Terra and automatically saved by Terra. And then you can load output into the notebook and then do downstream analysis under the same workspace. So this notebook is actually under this Notebooks tab. And if you want to find the different workspaces, and there are two places to start. So first is under Showcase. So if you click this hamburger menu on the upper left corner, you can access Library tab, which contains major Terra resources such as data and workflow and so on. And under Showcase, you can see this information. So currently, there are COVID-19 related workspaces and feature workspaces including Bioconductor and GATK for example workspaces. So this is one way you can find some useful pre-built workspaces. And the other way to search space is using keyword. So go back to that drop-down menu and open the workspace instead of library. Then here you can search workspace using keyword. So here I pick the single-cell RNA-seq and open the workspace with public access. Then you can see these different pre-built workspaces available to use. And then some of the workspace also has a lot of cost information, so it can be very useful for the first-time user to get a sense of how much it will cost. So in summary, thanks to the graphical user interface and pre-implemented workflows and notebooks, users need minimum coding to do bioinformatics analysis. And in addition to RNA sequencing analysis example I showed here, there are many other workspaces available, such as single-cell analysis, GWAS, and I showed you the GATK best practices. And as I mentioned earlier, again, users can benefit from flexible Google Cloud resources without putting too much effort on learning or maintaining it. Just one thing I want to note here is that your data actually should be stored in Google Cloud storage. Terra is currently expanding the cloud providers, but currently Google is the only place Terra can directly interact. And if you want to use Terra's data model, which I'm not covering in this talk, you need to create and upload the table of your data stored in Google Cloud Storage. So that's like a little bit of work you need to do to use. And the third example is about sharing your published work through Terra. So this use case example is based on my recent publication, a reliable analysis of clinical tumor omni-whole exome sequencing data. And I share this published work through Terra Workspace named Tumor Omni CMB. And earlier in the introduction, I briefly showed the header of a workspace because this workspace actually thoroughly uses all the elements of a workspace. So I will go through them here. And first, this dashboard. So I showed you this top part earlier, and now what's underneath is here, I'm showing. Under the dashboard, it contains information of the workspace. And actually, it's a free format and more also like a README MD file, so you can provide any information that you think proper. Under data, in my paper, I use TCGA control data set, but if I add a control data set in the workspace, only the people with access to the same data set can access this workspace. So I use a synthetic data set to make this workspace accessible to the public. And this synthetic data set is provided Terra, so I don't need to pay storage fee. And I also take advantage of pre-populated public reference files provided Terra, which is available under this reference data tab. And again, because it's provided Terra, I don't need to pay for the storage for reference files. And some of the accessory data sets, such as batch files, is stored in Google Bucket and linked to this workspace under workspace data. So all the data is in one place. And because I'm using a bunch of Terra provided workspace, I can save quite a lot of storage money. And under notebook section, I have 5 Jupyter notebooks written in R. And 4 of them are for pre-processing, and 1 is for downstream analysis. And Bioconductor's ANVIL package, which I'm going to introduce in a couple of minutes, enables a direct connection between data and notebooks. So you don't need to jump around different sections, and all the work can be done within a notebook. And a few slides earlier, I showed this CMB analysis pipeline diagram. And this is implemented into 7 WIDL workflows in Terra based on their modularity and input and output requirements. This workflow actually incorporate many different tools such as GATK, Mutact, and Bioconductor, but user doesn't need to worry about them. It's gonna be same, just put the input click the input, and then just run analysis. So in summary, the major benefit of having Terra Workspace for research papers are first, data storage, compute intense pipeline, and downstream analysis are all available in one place, which greatly improves the reproducibility. And sharing code and providing additional information not included in the paper are available through the workspace. And I want to note that it's kind of heads up as one potential downside is that for a complicated pipeline, such as like my CMV analysis, writing WIDL and managing data model can be non-trivial. And the last example is a workflow package powered by Terra. So the first 3 use cases all happened within Terra UI. But through API, you can use ANVIL provided resources without actually ever visiting the UI, which can be a more familiar practice for certain users and potentially makes it easy to scale. And to make it easy to access APIs of different ANVIL components, Bioconductor and built-in created ANVIL package. And this package is actually targeted for both end users and developers. So first, for the end user, ANVIL package provides fast binary package installation and utilities for working with Terra and ANVIL table and data resources, which makes it, as I mentioned a few slides earlier, that you can connect to the data section within the notebook. That's with the help of ANVIL package. And convenient functions for file movement to and from Google Cloud Storage, which I'm actually using a lot outside of like Terra and ANVIL. So for example, to manage Google Cloud account, you can use gcloud functions, so you can see here. And also you can manage Google Bucket using the gsutil function within the R section. So you can do such as like list bucket content using gsutil_ls, or providing a streaming interfaces without intermediate disk storage, just using gsutil pipe. But for the developers, ANVIL provides programmatic access to its components such as Terra, Leonardo, Dockstore, and Gen3 API, including helper functions to transform JSON response to the formats more amenable to manipulation in R. So now I just show that ANVIL package makes it easy to use Terra outside the UI and transfer data in and out from Google Cloud Storage. So to enhance our users' user experience, I built the runnable workflow package that allows users to access both Terra and Google Cloud resources from their R session using their own laptop in a very familiar way. So my first runnable workflow package is for microbiome analysis based on biobakeR workflow. So biobakeR workflow is a collection of workflows and tasks for executing common microbiome community analysis using standardized and validated tools and parameters. But there are a few potential blockers for using biobakeR. One thing is computing and storage resource can be a limiting factor, and biobakeR is all written in Python, so unfamiliarity of Python can be a barrier. And also the setup process is non-trivial. Thankfully, Curtis Lab, who developed biobakeR workflow, has implemented one of their workflows in Terra Workspace as MTX Workflow biobakeR version 3. This is a whole metagenome shotgun analysis workflow, which requires Python and biobakeR tools and databases. This workflow is perform QC and taxonomic and functional profiling. And this diagram on the right shows how this workflow is structured, so more of DIY workflow. The good news is biobakeR package, which is the name of the using biobakeR through Terra. This biobakeR package transforms this microbiome analysis workflow into a conventional R workflow. So users still need to create their Terra account at the UI, but only once. So once you have Terra account, all you need to do is just using some of the few R functions to run the workflow. So first, clone the template workspace and update the input with your own data and launch workflow using launch workflow function. And once job is done, which you can check using monitor submission function, you can review the outputs using list output function without downloading any of them. And you can actually download only the files you want using get output function. And here are some of the actual script running biobakeR, which was done on my own laptop. So in summary, with biobakeR package, users can run Python tools using Google Cloud resources from R session on their own laptop. And I want to emphasize that the best and simplest benefit of runnable workflow package is that it really minimizes the overhead for our user. So users don't need to set up computing environment, nor need to learn ANVIL, Terra, or Google Cloud platform, but they can still take advantage of all the benefit of those. So in conclusion, based on my 4 use cases, first, Terra offers an easy way to share bioinformatics work with the identical runtime environment, which greatly facilitates collaboration and then teaching. And second, Terra workspaces and workflows enable complicating bioinformatics analysis with minimum coding. And the third, you can increase the reproducibility of your work by sharing it through Terra, where you can host the data, workflow, and downstream analysis all together in one place. And the last, workflow package powered by Terra allows users to utilize Google Cloud resources and even non-R tools from our session on their own laptop in a very familiar way. And this is the end of my talk. And here I put a few links you might be interested in, and I want to point out a couple. So first, I had an ANVIL Terra workshop for BioC 2020 last summer. And you can find the resource from the link here. And you are more than welcome to join our BioC ANVIL Slack channel. And if you're interested in using ANVIL Terra platform and want to know any available free credit, please contact me through this email. And last but not least, I want to thank my advisor, Levi Vardron and Vardron's Lab, and Bioconductor ANVIL team, and then our funding. And thank you all for being here to listen to my talk. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
What is clapping?
There they go. There they go now. The emojis clapping. Thank you so much for that fantastic tour through ANVIL and Terra. And I'll remind that we're going to use the Q&A feature on the right-hand side. So if you do have any questions, feel free to post them, and you can also upvote questions as they pop up. So I have a question to get things started while people are typing out their first question. Mm-hmm. I was checking out Terra to remind myself, and so when people have workflows hosted on Terra, and then those can connect or be linked to DocStore. So my thought was, to some degree, as it's a platform, there's some amount of disconnect between, like, for example, a GitHub repository. So I might have a workflow that I type up and make available on GitHub, and as we've seen, but we as Bioconductor developers have noticed, like, there's a utility to GitHub as part of its social, the social aspect of coding. Are the Terra spaces are not required to be directly linked. The workflows hosted on Terra are not directly linked to GitHub, but they could.
Not really. So that's like kind of, I will say that they're mixed. So Terra's workflow, there are 2 main repositories. One is Bro's, like Firecloud, like the Bro's own repository, and then the DocStore. And then Bro's one, you don't really need to link to any GitHub and things. So you just have the WIDO script and then the input JSON, and that's just their versioning within their own platform. For DocStore to load to host your workflow, they require to have a GitHub link. So there is a GitHub has a GitHub repo which has a workflow and then JSON example input file, and then you need that to register your workflow in DocStore, and then from there you import the workflow to Terra. So yeah, some requires GitHub repo, some are not.
And then that would allow people would be able to interact then with the workflow code if it's backed up by. Okay, so now we've got some questions popping up. So the first one I saw, Mike Smith asks if access to Terra is available to users worldwide.
Yes.
Okay, and Kevin asks, what resources would you recommend as introduction to Terra to build up skill and confidence using it?
What resource would you recommend as an introduction to Terra? So one of the slides I showed that how to find the workspace, and then the one is like going to the under the library, and then there is a list of featured workspace. That will be the good place because there is a bunch of like introduction, like hands-on, holding your hands and go through how to use and all the data and things are provided there. So I will start with the some of the featured workspace that introduce the platform. And then after that, the good place will be just any workspace familiar with your own research. That will be a good place.
So there's another question from Michelle Hidotto. Do you plan to include support for workflow management systems other than Cromwell?
No. Workflow management. So the thing is, I think so. This is the Terra's workflow executing engine is pretty much exclusive Cromwell, and Cromwell actually can take both WDL and then CWA, the common workflow language. Right now, Terra supports only WDL, but they are trying to expand to the CWL, but I don't think they will try to switch Cromwell part at this point. So.
There's a question from Anna Evans about the cost of using Terra. I guess you already posted your slides, which had a table.
Yeah.
So you could, they could look back over the slides, I suppose.
Yeah, so that will be probably, I guess many people will be interested in just cost. And I didn't mention, but I mentioned that there will be free educational credit. Just contact Bioconductor ANVIL team to me. But also, once you first register Google Cloud Platform, they give the $300 of a free credit to play with the platform, so you can get that for initial tryout. So that will be my recommendation. And
so I guess Vince has posted a link to a book written by the Terra developers. And then just as a reminder, Sehyun posted her slides. If you scroll to the bottom of the QA, it's down there. There's a question from Alfred Sikagiri. Any intentions to consider support for other workflow languages such as SnakeMake or Nextflow?
I think Nextflow is possibly the next one. I mean, that part is probably not really under my control, and a little more of like a Dockstore side and then Terra side. And then Dockstore actually take Nextflow workflow. So I guess potentially Nextflow can be the next candidate, but that's all I know at this point. Oh, and by the way, I noticed that the slide is just PDF, and then the link, it's just link. So I will switch it to the actual URL, so you can just do it. And Vince, I will add that slides too.
Well, if there's no further questions, we can take a minute, or we have a 15-minute break. But let's give thanks again to Sehyun for this really insightful tour of a very important resource. And then, just as a reminder, the next session starts 15 minutes after the hour and is a session of short talks. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you.